great power comes great responsibility. These are the words that have defined Spider-Man for generations, but what if he actually misunderstood what responsibility truly means? What if responsibility does not look like isolating yourself from other people? And to be honest, I totally get it. Like, I deal with that too. Isolation is a huge problem today, one that needs solving, and I think Spider-Man actually has a solution to that problem. And not only that, but he has a biblical solution. That is something I did not expect Sony to do and something that we need to talk about today. I left this movie emotionally distraught, not because Ned and MJ and Peter Parker don't reunite in the way that I wanted them to, which was kind of annoying. Sony, I have one word for you, and it is the word bruh. But because Peter's loneliness felt familiar. Isolation is a real problem today. Identity is a real struggle. People don't know where to find purpose anymore. And you know what, guys? I struggle with that too. That's why I want to talk about it today. So as a true Spider-Man fan and as somebody who really loves analyzing movies critically, let's talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day and the deeper meaning underneath. Peter thinks that carrying everything alone is his duty. But actually, Brand New Day suggests that real responsibility is meant to be carried by Peter, supported by a community, because he was never meant to carry all of that responsibility on his shoulders alone. So hear me when I say this. The question is not whether Peter Parker should be more responsible, it is whether he should carry that responsibility alone. First, let me just make something very, very clear. I love Spider-Man, like a lot. As far as Phase 4 goes, this has been my favorite movie. I will go ahead and just say that outright.
That's my opinion!
Spider-Man gives us a lot to think about, but he's not too lofty of a character that you can't relate to him. He's extremely relatable. And I don't just love him because of all of the fandom or because he just makes funny comments, although those are hilarious. I love him because he is one of the most admirable superheroes out there. His heroism is not built on being perfect. He's awkward, he says silly things, he tries to fill the space, he's insecure, all of these things, but he keeps choosing to help people anyways. That is something that I look up to and want to be a better person because of that. And yet, Brand New Day recognizes something really important. That admirable qualities like Spider-Man has can become unhealthy when it's separated from a community. Peter's selflessness started to erase who he was, his courage became recklessness, his responsibility became control of his own life, and his desire to protect people was an excuse for anybody to truly know him so that he could protect them. And I know a lot of people are talking about that a lot right now, but we're going to dive into why that matters. How we can actually apply that. Why it's worth discussing, not just discussing it for the sake of discussion. Because that is what makes this story so interesting. So first, at the beginning of this movie, Peter is almost completely alone. MJ and Ned are living their own lives, separated from Peter Parker. Peter sees them from a distance. He's like viewing them through his phone on Instagram. He's refusing to step back into their lives. And he has the opportunity to tell MJ who he was, but he doesn't. Why? Because he believes, he's convinced himself, he doesn't just believe this, he is convinced himself that staying away from her is an act of love. He believes that if he remains isolated from MJ, that she will be safer. And this is not a ridiculous belief. I mean, he is trying to isolate himself in order to protect like supervillains from targeting his loved ones. If they don't know who he loves, then how will they know how to target him? But then he goes up against a telepath, so that kind of fell apart really fast. At one point, Peter tries to explain to MJ why he isolated himself, and she literally tells him, well, it didn't work. And here we are. Peter's isolation did not prevent the danger, it only meant that he faced the danger alone. And that was his first major problem with his understanding of responsibility. Because if you refuse to let anybody know what you are carrying, you are not necessarily protecting them. You are only preventing them from loving you, especially when you need it most. So that's Peter's loneliness, but why does that truly matter? What does that actually do to him? Well, in Brand New Day, we see that Peter is living a dual life, right? He is living Spider-Man and Peter Parker. However, on the outside, he is functional, he's doing the things he's supposed to do, he's fighting criminals, but inwardly, he is wasting away. He has turned Spider-Man into his entire life, and that is one of the most... He has turned Spider-Man into his entire life. That is one of the most interesting ideas in this movie, and I think this is where I really got stuck on. Spider-Man is not only Peter's mission, it is actually his hiding place. As long as he keeps the mask on, he does not have to confront the realities of death and grief in his life. He doesn't have to deal with his loneliness from MJ, from Ned, from his aunts. Like, he doesn't have to deal with any of these things as long as he has this responsibility. He has twisted his understanding of what responsibility used to mean, and he has made it something of a mask, of a shield from the hardness of life. And guys, this is such an honest observation about how a lot of us live, about how I live. Because I'll just speak for myself. You can chime in if you would like down in the comments, but I stay busy so that I don't have to deal with my boredom or my loneliness or something else in my life. I serve other people because it's easier to serve than to make myself vulnerable and be known by others. I sometimes achieve because achievement is easier than answering the question, am I valuable? I, scripted all of that. That comes out very intellectual, but you know what I mean. This is not just a loneliness problem. This is a problem of identity. Where does our identity actually come from? And does what we are doing in life actually prevent us from realizing what that identity really is? Because in Peter Parker's life, he has chosen to reject his Peter identity and just fully pour into Spider-Man. And I think one of the best parts of this movie was his whole struggle with the arachnid DNA mutation thing. I don't really know exactly what label to put that on, but his body literally starts changing because his identity shifts from being Peter Parker and Spider-Man to just mainly becoming Spider-Man. And as he becomes more and more the arachnid, he starts to lose his Peter Parker identity. And throughout the movie, obviously, he resolves that and realizes he needs to be both. But I thought it was so interesting that this movie externalizes Peter's inner life through his physical transformation. That was brilliantly done. Good job, director. Keep making movies. You're doing great. Sony, love you. This movie poses a very interesting question. What happens when you place your identity in something that can change? And what happens when that thing does change? That is the key to understanding this movie entirely. So the next key that we need to unlock is Peter's identity cannot be reduced by what he can do, right? That is not where his identity should be. And I think we see this when he is talking with Bruce Banner about his inhibitor. This was a very fascinating part of the movie too, something else that I thought on for a couple of days. But this parallel is fascinating. Bruce is trying to control the Hulk. Peter is trying to control the spider within him. And the way that they deal with that is by suppressing who they truly are. They could just accept who they are, which was a little weird because I think Bruce Banner did that originally and then he was trying to suppress it again, which led to his being unleashed onto the building and the world again. Very fascinating that it all went down that way. But eventually, what you refuse to face comes back and bites you in the butt. Because you can suppress it for a while. You can do that with your work, with joking around, with responsibility, or even with religious language, but eventually it's going to come around and you're gonna have to face it. And honestly, that was one of the most encouraging ideas of this movie because it's so relatable. Most of us deal with that. And Peter Parker is, again, just an admirable character facing the world alone this time, but realizing what he needs to do. And that is something that I want to mimic in my own life. I can have responsibility without allowing that responsibility to become my entire identity. So I want to be careful here. Your identity should not be found in your work or what you do, your responsibility, all of that stuff. It should be found in something else. Now, the movie itself, I think, gives you the answer that it should be found in community, in what other people think of you. And I actually think that that is wrong. From a Christian perspective, I believe that is very, very wrong. Not because it is necessarily morally incorrect, but because it's going to fail. Again, we talk about where does your identity need to be placed? Well, it needs to be placed in something that won't change. Well, people's opinions change on you on the daily, on the hourly, honestly. We all know how social media works. People can love somebody 1 minute and then completely turn on them the next. So where should your identity come from? Spider-Man is a hero. He is not a god, though. Peter Parker can save people from danger, but he cannot carry the ultimate weight of the world by himself. And neither can we. Which is amazing and wonderful, and I'm so glad about that because that distinction matters. As Christians, we are called to serve, we are called to love people, we are called to be responsible with what we are given and to help other people, to glorify God, to share the gospel, and care for others around us. So hear me when I say this, we are not the heroes of our own salvation. Jesus is, and that is one of the most beautiful, remarkable things about this life. Our identity is not found in who we are. Our identity is found in our Savior, who can actually carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. I just love that. Peter's problem is that he wants to help other people. His problem is that he starts depending on himself for that, but that was never the answer. And it actually led him to flounder and fail and really, really struggle until he realized that it's not just about him, that it's about something greater than him. That is why I love Spider-Man, because that gives us a greater picture of what the Christian life should look like. Something that Sony probably wasn't trying, that the MCU probably was not going for. They're going for this like community vibe thing these days, but I think they spoke to something even deeper, and it's undeniable. It's so easy to fall into the trap that everything depends on us, our work, our church, people. Guys, it's not humility to do this. It's not humility to keep sacrificing yourself for people over and over and over again if it's coming from a place where we feel like we have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. Because what I think it actually is a desperate attempt for control. Peter Parker was trying to control his own life because everything fell out of control. It was the one thing that he was good at, that he could control. And what we do need to look for is a God who gives us identity and a community who can give us support. That was the message that I think we needed to focus on, and something that Spider-Man Brand New Day did an excellent job of doing. That was the key to this movie, guys. I think this humanizes Spider-Man to a degree that was very, very helpful, actually. The MCU is improving because they're not just trying to grow the universe, they're trying to grow the characters. That was the problem they had been falling into for a long time, I believe, in my opinion. So, good job, Spider-Man Brand New Day. Very, very good. I hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion on these deeper themes in Spider-Man Brand New Day. So please, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. My name is Ethan Wood. This has been Cut the Crap. I will see you guys in the next one.